5 years to the day my mother died, my father brought them home. A woman and her daughter, standing on our doorstep as if they belonged there. I stood in the doorway, a human barrier, my arms spread wide. I would not let them pass. That was the first time my father, Walter, ever hit me. The sharp sting of his palm against my cheek echoed in the cavernous hall. "From now on, this woman is your mother," he snarled, his voice a low growl I no longer recognized. He gestured to the smirking woman, Vivian, and then to the girl hiding behind her. "And she is your sister. If you can't accept that, then you can get out." Fueled by a grief that had curdled into rage, I left. I thought he was bluffing, but he wasn't. He immediately froze all my assets and seized the deed to the small riverside apartment my mother had left me, her name on the title now just a ghost on a piece of paper. He had cast me out onto the streets with nothing but the clothes on my back. Weeks later, huddled in a cheap, damp rental room, a violent cough racked my body. I stared in horror at the bright crimson blood spattered across the floorboards. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through my defiance. I dialed my father's number. The line connected, but I couldn't speak. All I could hear was the sound of his new life, the clinking of silverware, the warm murmur of conversation, and the bright, happy laughter of a family at dinner. My family replaced. "If you're going to die, then get on with it," he said, his voice cold and distant. "I'm not a doctor." He hung up. What Walter had forgotten, or perhaps simply didn't care to remember, was that from the moment I had walked out his door, I had no money. I couldn't even afford to buy painkillers. The memory of his slap still burned on my face. It was a fresh wound layered over a deeper one. He had raised his hand to his own daughter for a woman he barely knew, for a girl who was a stranger. Vivian, the stepmother, rushed forward, grabbing Walter's wrist with a practiced air of concern. Her eyes, when they met mine, were brimming with a sickeningly sweet pity. "Darling, how could you hit the child?" she cooed, her voice smooth as silk. She then turned to me, her expression a mask of gentle empathy. "Alara, I'm not trying to replace your mother. Tanya and we just want to help take care of your father with you." As if on cue, Vivian pushed her daughter, Tanya, forward. The girl smiled a saccharine smile, holding a large, ornate picture frame. A new family portrait. My eyes were drawn to it, and Tanya, noticing my gaze, tilted the frame just so, revealing the full picture under the light. There was my father, Walter, standing proudly between Vivian and Tanya. The three of them looked like a perfect, happy family. A complete set. A bitter memory surfaced. My own mother, in the last year of her life, had begged for a family portrait. But Walter's company was on the verge of going public, and he was always too busy. His replies were a constant refrain of postponement. "Soon," he'd say. "Let's do it in a few days, I'm swamped right now." Or, "Can't we just take a selfie on the phone?" The only family picture we had was a simple, candid shot taken at a dinner table, now sitting on the mantelpiece in the living room. A wave of hot, visceral hatred washed over me. I wanted to rip their manufactured happiness to shreds. The thought had barely formed before my hand shot out, my fingers brushing against the photograph Tanya held. Before I could pull back, Tanya gave me a soft, knowing smile. The next second, the frame slipped from her grasp and crashed to the floor, the glass shattering into 1,000 tiny pieces. "Oh, sister, it was my fault," Tanya stammered, her eyes wide with fake shock. My hand slipped. Vivian rushed to her side, pulling Tanya up from where she was pretending to pick up the broken shards. When she looked up at me, her eyes were already welling with tears. "Alara, you don't have to accept me," she sobbed. "But Tanya is innocent in all of this." The moment Vivian started to cry, my father's anger flared anew. Seeing the look of profound concern on his face as he comforted her, I felt a sharp, painful pang of injustice for my dead mother. My mother had been with Walter since the very beginning, when he was just a struggling entrepreneur with big dreams. She had supported him as his business grew, as his empire expanded. But as he became more successful, he became more absent. She never complained, always bearing her discomfort in silence so as not to distract him. It wasn't until the day she coughed blood onto my face that I realized how pale and gaunt she had become. All of Walter's money couldn't save a patient in the final stages of lung cancer. As she lay dying, he held me in one arm and clutched her hand with the other. "Don't worry," he had whispered to her, his voice thick with tears. "I will take care of our daughter. Don't be afraid. Wait for me to find you." The stinging pain from his slap was a brutal reminder of how empty that promise was. He didn't know that this wasn't my first encounter with Vivian and Tanya. I had seen them before, at his company's victory gala. I had been in the restroom when I overheard their conversation through the stall door. "Tanya, our good life is about to begin," Vivian had whispered excitedly. "That man's wife is finally dead. He's only got one daughter. Once I marry him, that little brat will have to do everything I say." I had seen women like her 100 times, circling the wealthy like vultures. But something had made me look closer. In the reflection of the mirror I saw that Vivian's eyebrows, the arch of her brow, bore a faint, unsettling resemblance to my mother's. I never imagined that she would be the one to stand in my mother's home. "I see your mother spoiled you rotten." Walter's voice ripped me from my thoughts. He moved to help Vivian up. I scrambled forward, desperate to make him see the truth. "Dad, they're lying to you. They're just after your money. I heard them myself." He didn't even let me finish. With an impatient wave of his hand, he shoved me away. I lost my balance and fell backward, my hand landing squarely on the shards of broken glass. A sharp searing pain shot up my arm. I squeezed my eyes shut, biting my lip to keep from crying out. When he saw the blood welling in my palm, my father froze. For a single fleeting moment, he reached a hand toward me, then quickly retracted it, as if my blood might burn him. When he spoke again, his words were colder than ice. "You brought this on yourself. From this day on, she is your mother. And Tanya is your sister. If you can't accept them, then don't you dare call me your father again." The glass was still embedded in my palm. I clenched my fist, feeling the shards dig deeper, the pain a grounding force in the chaos. When I opened my hand again, I looked calmly at the man who had promised my dying mother he would care for me. "Fine, Mr. Walter," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I hope you and your new family will be very happy together." The father who had loved me was gone anyway, and the daughter who stood before him now wouldn't be in this world for much longer. As I pushed myself up from the floor, a wave of dizziness washed over me. Our housekeeper, Maria, saw me sway and rushed forward to help, but my father's voice stopped her in her tracks. "Don't help her. Let her walk on her own," he roared. "If she doesn't want to be my daughter, then she can get out. And she's not taking a single thing from this house with her." Without another glance at him, I swallowed the metallic taste of blood in my mouth and gave Maria a weak smile to show I was all right. "Fine by me," I said, loud enough for him to hear. "Who would want any of it?" As expected, my father's face darkened to a thunderous black. The look in his eyes was a toxic mix of disgust and fury. I went upstairs and packed a small bag. When I came down, Vivian and Tanya were sitting on the sofa, flanking my father, murmuring words that sounded like concern but were laced with poison, each sentence a subtle reminder of my rebellion. My gaze fell upon our old family photo on the mantelpiece. After a moment's hesitation, I walked over to take it with me. It was my mother's favorite picture, and a symbol of her greatest regret. Vivian, ever the opportunist, saw her chance and jumped up, blocking my path with a show of feigned sympathy. "Alara dear, just apologize to your father. If your mother were here, she wouldn't want to see you two like this," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. She then picked up the photo. "Look, what a beautiful picture, isn't it, Walter?" As she held it up, I lunged forward, desperate to snatch it from her hands. I never even touched her. The moment I got close, Vivian stumbled backward theatrically, collapsing near the coffee table. "What are you doing?" Tanya shrieked, jumping to her feet. "My mother didn't do anything. Why did you push her?" Walter, whose anger had just begun to subside, saw Tanya helping a whimpering Vivian to her feet. His gaze flickered from them to me, and then to the photograph I now clutched in my hand. "I told you," he said, his voice dangerously low. "You are not to take a single one of my things with you. That includes the photograph in your hand." His eyes darted to the small suitcase by my feet. "Maria," he bellowed, "throw that suitcase out. Everything in it was bought with my money." Maria hesitated, but under his furious glare, she lowered her head and carried my bag away. In the photo, my mother's smile was radiant. I stared at the man across from me for 2 long seconds. Rira. The sound of tearing paper cut through the silence. I had torn the photograph in half. This picture was taken by my mother. She was the one who had it developed, I said, my voice steady. "You can have your half." I held out his side of the photo. When he didn't take it, I placed it gently on the coffee table. It was raining outside. The only thing I took from that house was my half of a broken family. Through the reflection in the glass of the front door, I saw my father's silhouette. He glanced at the torn piece of the photo on the table, then swept it into the trash can without a second thought. I stepped out into the downpour without an umbrella, the cold rain soaking me to the bone in an instant. After walking for what felt like an eternity, a taxi finally slowed to a stop. Inside, I couldn't suppress the coughs, the taste of blood rising in my throat. The taxi pulled up to the curb of the Riverside apartment complex my mother had bought for me on my 18th birthday. Fumbling, I took out my phone to pay, only to find that every single one of my bank cards had been frozen. My father had planned this from the moment I walked out the door. This was my lesson. The driver was growing impatient. "If you can't pay, I'm calling the police." "No, wait," I pleaded, frantically searching my pockets. I managed to find $200 in cash, a forgotten emergency stash. The fare took more than half of it. The moment I stepped out of the car, a gust of wind cut through my wet clothes, making me shiver violently. I was in such a hurry to leave that I had to ask the security guard to let me into the building. He asked for my apartment number, and the hand he had raised to open the gate dropped to his side. Seeing me shivering, a look of pity crossed his face. "The owner of that unit called just a little while ago," he said, his voice hesitant. He gave specific instructions that no one was to be let in. His words left me stunned. "The owner? The owner of this apartment is my mother." It was a man who called, wasn't it? But my mother bought this for me. He has no right to do this. "Let me in, or I'll file a complaint against you." At the threat of a complaint, the guard grew anxious. He handed me a cup of hot water and tried to explain. "Miss Alara, it's not that I don't want to help you, but after your mother passed away, this property was transferred to Mr. Walter as part of her estate, and the money used to buy it, it was from his accounts." His voice trailed off, his eyes filled with sympathy. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Even a stranger could see the cruelty in this, yet it was being done by my own father. "Miss Alara, please don't make this difficult for me. I have a family to feed, I can't lose my job." I didn't hear the rest of his words. A loud buzzing filled my ears. Perhaps seeing how pitiful I looked, the guard offered me his umbrella. Just as I looked up, a car turned into the driveway, its headlights blinding me in the dim light. I felt dizzy, unsure if it was from the glaring light or the prolonged exposure to the cold rain. But a familiar figure stepped out of the car. Caleb, the son of my mother's best friend. My mom used to joke that our families had tried to arrange our marriage when we were babies. The story went that Caleb was holding me, and I peed all over him. He refused to hold me ever again, and that was the end of our childish engagement. "Alara? What are you doing standing out here soaking wet?" he asked, rushing over. "And your hand? What happened? Is that blood?" His words made me look down at my palm. The wound from the broken glass had been left untended for so long the blood had dried into a dark, ugly scab. Caleb's genuine concern was a warmth that threatened to shatter my composure. Tears welled in my eyes. He quickly stepped forward, gently wiping them away with his thumb. "Today I started to explain, but a sudden violent tickle in my throat cut me off. Before I could even turn my head, blood erupted from my mouth with a series of deep racking coughs. I collapsed to the ground, my eyelids feeling impossibly heavy. The last thing I saw was Caleb's face, pale with terror, his crisp white shirt splattered with crimson. "Alara, don't you fall asleep. Keep your eyes open." I heard his panicked voice. "Somebody call an ambulance." I saw his frantic expression and wanted to tell him it was okay, but I couldn't form the words. He's going to hate me again, I thought dimly. He was such a neat freak. A week earlier, I had been in the bathroom when I suddenly coughed up blood. I had only ever seen something like that happen to my mother. A deep primal fear seized me. When the hospital test results came back, my worst fears were confirmed. The doctor, upon learning that my mother had also died of lung cancer, told me with a sigh of regret that it was likely genetic. My own pre-existing blood disorder had only accelerated the disease's progression. My body had been sending warning signs for months, but I had been so lost in grief, I developed a fear of doctors. And my father, who was home less and less, never noticed my increasingly pale complexion. "We recommend you start chemotherapy immediately," the doctor had said. "Otherwise, you may not even have 2 months." My father was the only family I had left in the world. I wanted to tell him, but it was the night of his company's big gala. And after that night, his attitude toward me grew colder than ever before. In a hazy fog, I thought I heard someone calling my name. When I opened my eyes again, everything was white. For a moment I thought I was dead. Caleb saw me stir and rushed to my side, helping me sit up. I managed a weak smile to reassure him, but his expression was grim. "You're this sick," he said, his voice tight with anger and fear. "Why didn't you tell us?" Then a dreadful thought seemed to occur to him. His eyes widened. "Don't tell me you didn't even tell your father." My silence was all the answer he needed. "This is serious, Alara. How could you not tell your family?" he exclaimed, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You're acting like a spoiled child. If your Aunt Amelia were still here, she would never let you be so reckless." He pulled out his phone, ready to call my father. I tried to stop him, but I was too weak to even get out of bed. He deliberately stepped away from me, putting the phone on speaker. "Mr. Walter," Caleb said, his voice urgent, "I have to tell you something about Alara. She's in the hospital right now. I don't care if she dies on the street." My father's voice cut through the line, sharp and merciless. The cold words echoed in the sterile room. Just before he hung up, I heard other voices in the background. "Walter, darling, come and eat. Get off the phone." It was Vivian. "Yes, Daddy. Come on. I can't wait to eat the braised fish you made for me," Tanya's cheerful voice chirped. The line went dead. The silence that followed was deafening. Caleb looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain that mirrored my own. I had to force a casual, bitter tone. "I told you not to call him. He has a new wife now and a new daughter. He's probably been waiting for a burden like me to die for a long time." The word die made Caleb rush to my side. "Don't say that. Don't even think it," he chided, his voice trembling slightly. His reaction was almost funny. When we were kids, I used to pray to the school statues for good grades, and he would always laugh at me. "Do you even know what science is? You're so superstitious." Now, he was the superstitious one, terrified by the doctor's prognosis. My mind woke before my body. I heard Caleb and the doctor talking just outside my door. My condition had worsened. I had less than 2 weeks left. I insisted on being discharged. Caleb, unable to change my mind, relented. He wanted me to stay with him so he could take care of me, but I refused. "A single man and a single woman? No thank you," I said, trying for a light-hearted tone. "I'd like to leave this world with my reputation intact." Perhaps because he knew my time was short, Caleb didn't argue. When I glanced back at him, his eyes were red. I pretended not to see. I couldn't tell him the real reason. I was afraid of dying in his house, of cursing it with bad luck. In the small apartment he rented for me, we talked for hours. We talked about our childhood, and why we had grown so distant after my mother died. I always thought it was just the grief, but his hesitant answers made me suspect there was more. When I saw he didn't want to talk about it, I dropped it, assuming it had something to do with a growing business rivalry between our families. "So," I said, changing the subject, "aren't you going to tell me about your girlfriend?" A strange look crossed Caleb's face. For years, our parents had joked about setting us up. Whenever they did, his ears would turn red and he'd sneak glances at me. The talk finally stopped after my mother passed away. I never found the right time to tell you," he stammered. "How did you know?" My gaze fell to the silver band on the middle finger of his right hand. I'd noticed it in the hospital. He saw where I was looking and understood. "We just got together recently. Actually, we met at your dad's, at Mr. Walter's company gala." "A company gala?" That piqued my interest. The guests were either business partners or employees. I might even know her. I asked him to show me a picture. As he scrolled through his phone, he couldn't stop singing her praises. "I'm telling you, she's so gentle. Not like you used to hit me all the time when we were kids," he teased. "And she has a cute name too. It's Tanya." Crash. The water glass slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. When I looked up, Caleb was holding his phone out, the screen frozen. It was a picture of Tanya. Tanya was Caleb's girlfriend. For the first time in my life, I discovered it was possible to laugh while your heart was breaking. Caleb, thinking I was having a medical episode, rushed to help me. I shoved his hands away with a strength I didn't know I had. "Go," I said, my voice a hollow whisper. "I want to be alone." "Alara, what's wrong? Are you?" "Get out." Just go. I screamed, staggering up from the sofa, my head spinning. Caleb's face was a canvas of confusion and panic. Ilara, tell me what's wrong. Do you know Tanya? At the mention of her name, my body went rigid, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Why were the only people I cared about now entangled with the people I hated most? Ilara, please talk to me, he begged. I can help you. I looked up at him, my voice raw and hoarse. Help? How can you help? By telling your girlfriend's mother to get out of my house? By telling your girlfriend to never show her face to me again? I was hysterical, screaming at him, all my pain and betrayal pouring out. I felt his hands, which had been gripping my shoulders, slowly slide away. I'm sorry, he whispered over and over. I'm so sorry. But it wasn't his fault. Not really. His phone began to ring, shrill and insistent. He glanced at the screen, then at me. I could faintly hear Tanya's voice from the earpiece. Perhaps she had been too far away when my father was on the phone, which is why Caleb hadn't recognized her voice then. If he had, would he even be here with me now? I couldn't bear to think about it. I walked to the door and gently closed it, shutting him out. Watching his retreating figure, a profound exhaustion settled over me. It was for the best. When I was gone, everyone would have someone they loved by their side. What was one less person in the world? I tossed and turned all night, sleep eluding me. Just as I was finally drifting off, my phone screen lit up. My father's name. A wave of pent-up sorrow washed over me, and I answered, a foolish, desperate hope flickering in my chest. I choked back a sob, trying to speak, but his voice, thick with rage, crashed down on me before I could utter a sound. How could your mother have raised a daughter like you? He yelled. What did Tanya ever do to you? I'm telling you, you will come home and apologize to Tanya and your Aunt Vivian right now, or I swear I will teach you the lesson your mother never did. I tried to defend myself, but a tickle in my throat exploded into a violent coughing fit. I spat mouthful after mouthful of blood onto the clean white sheets Caleb had put on the bed. When I finally caught my breath, he had already hung up. He hadn't even hesitated. The blood on the duvet was a shocking, terrifying sight. I suddenly wondered, if he saw his daughter vomiting blood, would he regret the cruel words he'd said? The brief moment of self-pity passed, replaced by confusion. I couldn't understand what he was talking about, and I certainly wasn't going to apologize to them. I curled up on the sofa, letting the painkillers drag me into a numb, fitful sleep. I missed all of Caleb's subsequent calls and messages. The next morning, a loud, insistent knocking woke me. My head was foggy, the taste of blood still lingering in my mouth. I opened the door, and before I could even see who it was, a sharp slap sent me reeling. I'm going to teach you a lesson on your mother's behalf, my father's voice boomed. Thankfully, the rug broke my fall. How did I raise a monster like you? A homewrecker, he raged. If your mother were alive, she'd be ashamed. Ilara, you have disgraced her memory. Each accusation was punctuated by another blow. My face swelled instantly, my whole body aching. What are you talking about? What homewrecker? I cried, my voice muffled against the floor. I don't know what you're talking about. If Mom were here, she would never let you do this to me. You promised her you would take care of me. Is this how you take care of me? I screamed at him with all the strength I had left. At the mention of my mother and his promise, his hand froze in midair. His face was a dark storm cloud, his gaze a complicated mess of emotions. If you hadn't gone to Caleb and told him to break up with Tanya, she wouldn't have tried to kill herself with sleeping pills at home, he said, his voice laced with venom. Your Aunt Vivian is at the hospital with her right now, and you still feel no remorse. His words stunned me. I never imagined Caleb would actually break up with Tanya right after leaving my apartment, and I certainly never thought she would attempt suicide. If Vivian hadn't woken up early to call her for breakfast, she would be dead right now. A small, sharp laugh escaped my lips. I couldn't help it. As if Tanya was truly that lovesick. This was all a performance, and I was the unwilling audience. If she had really wanted to die, she wouldn't have been found so conveniently, and now I was being beaten for it. Seeing me laugh, my father's face turned crimson with rage. He grabbed my collar and hauled me to my feet. Get up. We're going to the hospital to apologize, he yelled, dragging me toward the door. And even if you won't apologize, I will make you kneel before her until she is satisfied. The sudden movement sent my head spinning. The world tilted and I pitched forward. Ilara! Let her go. Caleb suddenly appeared, his younger, stronger arms easily prying me from my father's grasp. The moment of release made me gasp for air. The next thing I knew, I was vomiting into Caleb's arms. The world seemed to stop. The only sounds were my own ragged breathing and my father's sharp intake of breath. Caleb held me tightly. I looked down and saw that I hadn't thrown up water. It was dark, clotted blood. Remembering the bloody mess I'd left in the bedroom, I suddenly forgave Caleb for getting me beaten up. It seemed he would have to be the one to clean it up. Through a dizzying haze, I thought I saw panic in my father's eyes. He stood there, helpless like a lost child, his hands hovering near me but pulling back every time he saw the blood on my face. "I'm taking you to the hospital now," Caleb said, his voice shaking. "Don't be scared. We're going right now. Don't fall asleep, okay? Just don't fall asleep." As Caleb rushed me out, he told my father to go into my room and get my ID. It was only after we were gone that Walter seemed to snap out of his shock. He stumbled into my rented room. When he flipped on the light, the sight that greeted him made the hardened businessman collapse to the floor. The blood from the night before had soaked through the white duvet, drying into dark, grotesque patterns. This scene should have been familiar to him. He had seen it before, in the final days of my mother's life. Back then, my mother was in constant agony. I often saw my father hiding on the balcony, secretly wiping away his tears. When he noticed me watching, he would quickly compose himself and pull me into a hug, telling me not to be afraid. But his trembling hands betrayed him. He was the one who was most afraid. For a long time after she died, he would sit by my bed every night until I fell asleep. "Thank God I still have you with me, Alara," he used to say. "What would I do all alone?" But then something in his eyes began to change. It was a look I couldn't understand, a mixture of doubt and something else. As if he were looking through me at someone else. After the gala, that look curdled into pure disgust. At the hospital, I had a long dream. I was in a place full of beautiful dolls, and they wanted me to stay and play. But then a woman appeared, and the dolls vanished. When she turned around, I saw that she had my mother's face. "Go back, my sweet girl," she whispered. "Go back." I screamed, my eyes flying open, my consciousness returning. But I couldn't seem to force my eyelids apart. Caleb's voice filtered into my awareness, every word painfully clear. "I'm sorry, Alara. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to you and I'm sorry to your aunt," he sobbed. But I was too scared to say anything. "If I told you, I was afraid you would never forgive me. This is all my fault. What do I do? What should I do?" His apology made no sense. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but my body wouldn't respond. I felt a warm wetness on my hand. He was crying. "I don't know where those pictures of your aunt and my dad came from. I was so angry, so I had someone slip them onto your father's table at the gala. By the time I calmed down, it was too late. He had already seen them. I was too scared to face you, so I avoided you. I never thought he would actually believe them. I never thought. I'm sorry, Alara. I'm so sorry." So that was it. That was why my father's gaze had become so filled with loathing. He thought my mother had betrayed him, and by extension, he suspected that I wasn't even his. The growing distance between our families, which I had attributed to business, was because of this. With a monumental effort, I opened my eyes and pulled my hand from his grasp. He looked up, his face filled with relief at seeing me awake. But when his eyes met my cold, empty stare, he froze. "I heard everything," I said, my voice flat. "Caleb, I don't blame you. But I will never forgive you." The color drained from his face. Caleb had a beautiful smile, but this was the first time I had ever seen him smile in a way that was uglier than crying. "I'm sorry. Don't say it again," I interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "I've lost count of how many times you've said those words to me. I'm dying anyway. What good are more words? Can I at least stay here with you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Before I could answer, Tanya hobbled into the room, leaning on Vivian for support. The moment she saw Caleb, she burst into tears. Vivian marched straight up to him and slapped him hard across the face. "How could you do this to my daughter?" she shrieked. Caleb took the slap without a word. But when Vivian started to move toward my bed, he stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Our problems have nothing to do with Alara," he said, his voice firm. "How can it have nothing to do with her?" Tanya wailed. "You broke up with me because of her." Her screams echoed in the room, but Caleb remained unmoved. It was only when a coughing fit seized me that he finally looked down at Tanya. Then he took out his phone. I didn't break up with you because of Alara, he said coldly. I broke up with you because of this. He tossed the phone at her. From across the room I could see the screen. It was a photo of Tanya wrapped in the arms of another man. The moment I found out your mother was the new woman Mr. Walter married, I had a feeling, Caleb said, his voice dripping with contempt. What a coincidence that you would just happen to bump into me at that gala. I thought it was fate. Turns out I was just your next target. Tanya, it turned out, had done her homework. Before the gala, she'd had someone investigate all the eligible bachelors and set her sights on Caleb, the wealthy heir. But even after they were together, she had continued to see her old boyfriend. Realizing she was caught, Tanya's defiant demeanor crumbled. She looked up at Caleb with tear-filled eyes and reached for his hand, only for him to violently shake her off. She stumbled and fell to the floor. Seeing her daughter treated this way, Vivian finally snapped. She rushed to help Tanya up and then pointed a trembling finger at me. I'm telling you, even if Tanya did something wrong, you can't treat her like this, she spat. Tanya is Walter's daughter now too. You had better show some respect. Just then, my father and Caleb's parents walked in, followed by a man I didn't recognize. The look of triumph on Vivian's face vanished, replaced by stark terror when she saw the stranger. You know him, don't you? My father said, pushing the man toward Vivian. She shook her head frantically. No, I don't know him. I've never seen him before. Caleb's father punched the man in the stomach. He immediately doubled over, begging for mercy. It was her, he gasped, pointing at Vivian. She was the one who paid me to put the photos on Caleb's car. She took the pictures herself, not me. As the man's confession hung in the air, my father yanked Vivian up from the floor. Walter, slap. The sound of his hand connecting with her face was sharp and final. Tanya tried to intervene but was shoved aside by Caleb's mother. To live my whole life and be deceived by this kind of trash, she said, her eyes fixed on Caleb, but her words a clear indictment of my father. Vivian and Tanya were restrained, forced to kneel by my bedside, begging for my forgiveness. The photos, it turned out, were real, but they had been taken years ago, before my parents had even met. My mother, Caleb's mother, and Caleb's father were friends. My mother had been playfully showing them how to pose for a couple's photo. Vivian, a budding journalist, at the time had been trying to get a scoop on the Chens and snap the pictures, holding on to them for years. She had used the swirling rumors about my mother and Caleb's father to her advantage, and gambled that my grieving, insecure father would fall for it. And he had. Walter, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. It was all my fault, Tanya had nothing to do with it. Vivian cried, clutching at his pant leg. He kicked her away. Tanya is innocent? Then was my daughter not innocent? He roared, tears finally streaming down his face. Tanya crawled toward me, grabbing my sleeve, begging me to let them go. I tried to pull away, but I had no strength left. All of you, just get out, I whispered. I want to rest. They were all shocked by my quiet dismissal. After a moment, the room cleared, the hallway filled with the sounds of Vivian and Tanya's wailing. My father, however, refused to leave. Ilara, he said, his eyes red and swollen. Dad is so sorry. There was a time when all I wanted was to go back to how things were. Now it didn't seem to matter anymore. He hadn't trusted my mother. He had condemned her, based on a few photos. He had let his doubt poison his love for his own daughter. I found myself wondering how much of his grief at her funeral had been real. Just go, I said. I want to rest. He had 1,000 things he wanted to say, but my quiet dismissal silenced him. In the days that followed, I felt myself getting weaker. Caleb and my father visited every day, bringing my favorite foods. But the moment they opened the containers, a wave of nausea would wash over me. When my mother was dying, my father had dropped everything to be at the hospital with her. Spend more time with your mother, he told me. She likes having us here. But I was not my mother. I no longer wanted him here. Like he used to do when my mother was sick, he would often sit by my bed, thinking I was asleep, and wipe away silent tears. It's all my fault, he'd whisper to the empty room. I just didn't know how to face you. I loved your mother so much. When I saw those pictures, I was too afraid to find out the truth. I was afraid it was real. And even though I knew you were my daughter, every time I looked at you, all I could hear were the rumors. All I could see were those photos. I'm a monster. How could I have treated you this way? I didn't even notice you were sick. I kept my eyes tightly shut. He didn't know that the pain kept me from sleeping. I heard every word and each one felt like a sharp, ironic jab. Nothing could change the fact that he had beaten me for Tanya. He had judged me without a trial just as he had judged my mother. In that moment in his heart, Tanya had been his real daughter. On the day I knew was my last, I suddenly wanted to go outside. I didn't want my final moments to be in this sterile, antiseptic room. Before Caleb and my father arrived, I took the last of my cash and hailed a cab. By the time I reached my mother's grave, I was utterly exhausted. Her picture on the headstone was as beautiful as ever. I gently traced her face with my fingertips. Mom, I'm so tired. But it's okay. I won't be tired for much longer, I whispered. The weather is so nice today. The sun is so warm. You must have been so lonely by yourself. But after today, you won't be lonely anymore. I talked and talked, my phone buzzing incessantly with calls from Caleb and my father. A cool breeze blew past and I started to cough, my throat filling with the taste of blood. After sitting for a long time, I finally answered one of Caleb's calls. He picked up before the first ring finished. Elara, where are you? He asked, his voice frantic. Stay right there, don't move. I'm coming to get you. Hearing the panic in his voice, I let out a soft laugh. Caleb, I forgive you, I said. Try not to be so reckless in the future. You caused too much trouble. And give my father a message for me. Tell him that my mother and I will never forgive him. He failed her. And he failed me. I knew my father was there with him. He didn't need Caleb to relay the message. He had heard it all. I'm so sleepy. I just want to sleep. My voice trailed off. The phone slipped from my grasp. I could faintly hear Caleb's desperate cries on the other end, but the sound was already fading. When they found me, I was already gone. My body was curled up at the foot of my mother's headstone, peaceful like a newborn child. After I died, my father had me buried next to my mother. Consumed by guilt, Caleb worked with my father to ensure Vivian was sent to prison for fraud and defamation. As for Tanya, she had always loved rich men. Caleb, who could be terrifyingly cunning when he wanted to be, arranged a little encounter for her. She woke up in the bed of a wealthy heir known to carry a host of diseases. She nearly jumped from a building when she found out. After learning Caleb was behind it, she spent her days stalking his house trying to find him, but he had long since moved, his whereabouts a mystery. My father, who had dedicated his life to building his empire, donated his entire fortune to a foundation for cancer research in the wake of losing his wife and daughter. It was probably the best thing he ever did. He still visited our graves often, talking about the times when we were a family of 3. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you were both still here? He'd say, his voice a broken whisper against the stone. I miss you so much. What if I came to find you? That afternoon, there was an accident on the road leading to the cemetery. The news report was brief and to the point. Walter Sterling, former chairman of Sterling Industries who recently donated his entire fortune to charity, was tragically killed in a car accident today. His vehicle was found at the bottom of a cliff.